Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Jonathan Groth, who is the founder and CEO of Groth Law Firm. John, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. It's been a wild ride, so I appreciate being able to share some information with you.
Yeah, I always love learning from different people in different sectors, and so the legal sector, I'm sure that there's hardly anything happening there, and no changes ever are made, so it's always just neat to see what got you into the business and where you focus. So give us a little bit of background on yourself. What's your entrepreneurial journey been like, and what got you into the legal profession?
I have some long stories to tell, so I don't know how many hours or days you have for a tape recording here. But so just really, it started a long time ago. If you want to go back to the very beginning, I guess my entrepreneurial spirit was kind of put in motion back when I was a little kid. My dad was a firefighter, and firefighters, if you know them, always have multiple jobs. So he had me working on one of his jobs, making welding lines and welding machinery with them. And then from that, I tried to do something of my own, and I started raising hamsters, which is kind of crazy to say, but I had a job.
That's curious.
Raising hamsters. I know, yeah. It was, I'm not in the age where it was more of a, not really doing, newspaper throwing and that kind of stuff. So we lived kind of in a rural area. There weren't any places that I could go and throw newspapers on people's yards. So I figured out, well, what can I do instead? And I raised animals, and I sold them to different pet stores and did that kind of stuff. So then take me forward, I went to law school, and I was working for a law firm doing litigation and personal injury law, so helping victims of other people's negligence in Wisconsin. And then about 2010, my wife and I made some big decisions and said we're going to go out on our own. And I went down to my office and gave my notice, and then moved over to my basement and started the Groth Law Firm out of my basement. And now, it's 2022, 12 years later, and we have 7 attorneys and 25 staff, and we handle cases that are in Wisconsin, but also nationwide and really worldwide. We bought another law firm a couple of years ago, and that law firm does very unique cases that are vaccine injury cases, not COVID. This is before COVID, but they do vaccine injury cases, and that's worldwide. We have clients who are overseas.
Neat. Well, it sounds like because you work worldwide and you had to embrace being virtual and roll with the punches, you were probably doing that way before the COVID times, whereas a lot of people like, oh, COVID made us go virtual. People like you and me, it's like I've lived on Zoom. I mean, COVID didn't do anything to me. In fact, I was envious of the people that were like, oh, I'm quarantining. You gave me a break. Not me. I was busier than ever. So that's really neat to be able to use those tools to expand your reach.
And I agree with you. I think that's something that COVID kind of reinforced, that what we were doing was the right thing, because everybody else kind of caught up to us. And then we could say, and which I believe we still are, that we were an industry leader, with digital signatures, for example. We've been doing that for 6 years now. We're in Wisconsin. You could be in the very north woods of Wisconsin, 8-9 hours away, and my office is on the south side of Wisconsin, and we would have clients sign documents that are virtual, and there are some clients that we would just talk to, have a Zoom meeting with, or a Teams meeting, or I can't think of what that was back in the day. It was like freeconferencecall.com or something like that.
Or go to webinar, go to meeting.
Go to webinar, yes, go to meeting, exactly. Yep. Yeah, the Citrix, go to meeting, exactly. Yep. So, we would do that, but really before it was cool. And now it's just second nature. So, this is something where, during the shutdown, we didn't shut down. And, we certainly went our different ways, and everybody was able to go back to their house, but they kept on working. We actually increased our staff during this time because it was something that just had to happen. And with our other practice areas doing the vaccine injury and that, we were ready for the pandemic, and we didn't really have that big of a turn down. The real problem we had was there was a lull where people just stopped getting into cars. So then there were fewer car accidents. But then once people got back into cars, I'll be honest with you, it's almost like they forgot to drive. And I think there was a lot more road rage, and people were frustrated. And they went from few cars on the road to lots of cars on the road, and then it was just chaos. And
it's almost like it's like a rebound effect. Like, the level of accidents were this, but then when you take a break and then you get back to it, they feel like I'm in a hurry and I'm behind and I need to get back. And I've even heard this phrase a couple of weeks ago called revenge travel. Like, we've been shut down so long that we're just going to go. And I don't travel that much, but last week I flew to Chicago from Denver, and a 2.5-hour flight, get there, and it's delayed 4 hours. And it's like, how, why? So I think that's a good observation, is the world, maybe it's going to be different, but in many ways there is more activity in certain areas, like what you mentioned with the, driving.
Yeah. No, I agree 1,000,000%. And certainly, when you're trying to find places to go that are more open, that you saw the news stories about Florida and that kind of thing. The same thing happened for northern Wisconsin. There are people from the neighboring states that were trying to get to northern Wisconsin, and that was something that we saw really right away, because we had more car accidents for people who were driving out of state coming to certain areas of the state, and it was very cluttered. Lots of cars and people not paying attention, and therefore we got more business. So it's been interesting, very interesting.
So what types of areas sounds like you've got a vast array of sectors that you focus on, but what is the typical client that you work with?
Boy, the typical client is somebody who has been injured because of somebody else's negligence. So if it's the victim of a drunk driving accident, the victim of maybe nursing home abuse where there's understaffing at a nursing home, and somebody's mother or grandmother is affected because they don't have enough CNAs or RNs or whomever to care for that elderly person. So that's another area that we practice. Premises liability in general, that's a very broad kind of umbrella of, if somebody's porch collapses, for example, you'll see these on the news where there's a university's porch collapses, or a commercial facility didn't have something engineered properly and that collapses, those kind of cases. And then just somebody who is rear-ended because somebody else is texting on their phone and they might be injured. So that's the single event practice. We also have the vaccine injuries. It's something that's been around since the 1980s, where there's a vaccine injury compensation program that's 75 cents for every flu shot, I'll say, flu vaccine shot. It is sent over to this fund, and there's billions of dollars in this fund to pay for the injuries that are the result of flu vaccine. So if a flu vaccine negatively, I didn't know about it until a couple of years ago, and there's it's there, it's available for people, and the goal was to make it really a really low barrier to entry for people to get flu vaccines. There's one less excuse. If we have to go to the doctor or have physical therapy for a few months, who's going to pay for it? Well, they have this program that this money goes, and it's just sitting there waiting for people to come and claim the money. And it's interesting that because people don't know it, doctors don't know it, so you have all these diagnoses that you're trying to figure out what caused the injury. And it's as, oftentimes it's as easy as A plus B equals C. If you had the flu vaccine and have these different symptoms, it's probably because of the flu vaccine. And then they will say, okay, we'll pay for all the doctors, we'll pay for your wage loss, and there's separately paid for the attorneys. So the victim pays nothing, the fund pays everything.
That reminds me of the old story, which is like a cliche kind of a thing, but it applies to what you just said. Like this guy's car breaks down, he takes to the shop, and the mechanic looks up and around, and he bangs the engine with the hammer, and he goes, "Okay, that'll be $100." And the guy's like, "What? You hit the engine with a hammer? I'm not paying you $100." So he goes in the office and brings out an invoice and says, $1 for the hammer tap, $99 for knowing where to tap it. So in your case, you know that this is available. People probably don't know that. And when they can come to you and go, well, hey, if this would help me because whatever these circumstances are, you're able to access something that already exists. And that's, I'm sure that the legal profession gets a lot of flack for many things, but this is a fund that's sitting there with billions of dollars in it. And if you've been impacted and you can get your fair share, why not? And maybe your firm can help them tap into that.
And and I agree with you. And it's not like it's coming from tax dollars and there's some guilty people are taking advantage of it. This is a plan that was in place from the private sector with the help of the government going back in the 1980s. So the private sector has funded this with the goal of being able to disseminate the flu shots easier and making it mandatory in some regards. But it's interesting when you go to lunch with doctors, for example, and they don't know about this. They don't know about what the results or the symptoms are, that it's related to a flu shot or a flu vaccine or other kind of vaccine. So, it's interesting in my world, kind of like your world, when you're helping somebody in marketing, and you could be helping, somebody who owns a McDonald's one day or a franchisee for Culver's or whoever else, and then the next day something else. Same with me as I'm helping people today. I had a person who called me this morning who was hit by a semi and is in intensive care, and he doesn't know what to do. So I'm dealing with that today. And yesterday I was dealing with somebody who had a fall at a Walmart and has a leg injury, so you just never know what's happening. People who own the business are suffering, or somebody who's not. Was
the Walmart fall something where there might have been slick water on the floor or something like that?
Boy.
Let's put it this way, without getting into detail. The word that came to my mind with both of those and a couple of the scenarios that you had mentioned is the word negligence. So some entity out there was negligent because they, hit someone with the truck, or could have had safety features and mopped up water, or had, boxes in the way and someone tripped. Negligence causes injury, and then that's where you can come in and guide them through the process. And in marketing, there's this popular book called Building a Story Brand, and the author talks about how John Groth is not the hero. Guess who the hero is? Your client. Your client's the hero, and John is the guide, guiding them through the legal maze to help them understand, okay, now at this point, we need to consider this, and we need to take this and we need to make sure that this, and I'm going to guide you through the whole process. And at the end, the hero is the client who wins an award. So I think that's just really, I didn't want to get into details, but that negligence aspect is something where if someone is listening to this going, well, I wonder if this is negligence. This happened to me. Call in and see if it fits. Yeah,
that's exactly correct. It's negligence when you have systems in place, you have procedures that have to take place, and Walmart's the easiest scapegoat because they have so many systems. They have binders about what you need to do. One of the easiest things I can say is that Walmart, they have different codes, and you'll hear a code over the loudspeakers, and that means that there's a slippery substance on the ground. They're supposed to put a cone down first and then go to get other help. If they don't put the cone down first, they might know about it, but nobody else knows about it. So if they don't put the cone down first, that's negligence because the procedure says put the cone down to warn. So, and that's what happened yesterday. Is we had somebody who came on a scene. There was obviously it had been there for quite a while, and the worker at Walmart didn't follow their procedure. So in our mind, that's pretty clear negligence that they didn't follow the procedure that's in place and has been in place for years upon years based on Walmart's.
And you know that exists. So your firm knows, oh, well, this should have happened first, then this should have happened second. And from what you told me, Mr. or Ms. Client, this didn't happen. So, of course, we need to get your medical damage to take care of, but now we need to look at other things. So I think that's the whole point that people need to understand is you might feel wronged or you might have a question about a case. Explain it, and here's John listening to that through the ears of experience going, okay, I wonder if they put the cone down first, or I wonder if, what was the sequence of, and I've got let me dive into here, let me check this out, and now all of a sudden it's like, bingo, we have a potential case, and you don't know that until you reach out and talk to someone like yourself.
Yeah, and it's probably the same with you when you hear certain keywords. You're like, oh, I'm going to follow back up with that, with that keyword because there's something specific about that I know that means something more. And somebody that went through the experience may not know exactly how important that is. But when you have, in your world and my world, you have other things that you're dealing with. You can put the two together and say, okay, now we can come to some kind of answer for you, to some kind of solution to your problem because of our experience.
And it's almost like a recipe. It's kind of like, okay, well, I'm listening to everything you're saying. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of this and a pinch of that and a little bit of this. And when we put it all together, we have a case because all this sequence of events. And so it is not as simple as check the box. Like, oh, I slipped and fell, so I should get X. It's like this whole let's weave the story together and let's weave the facts of the story together. So I think that's something if you have someone that's like, hey, I just got out of law school, let me take your case. Nothing against newer attorneys, but when you hear someone like yourself with your experience and dozens of attorneys and the breadth of your firm, you know that you've seen a thing or two.
Yeah, and that's one of my favorite things really is teaching others, and I like to use that experience that I have as a professor for a while, that I can go and help people understand, then really certainly help our staff to understand so they can help the next person better. That's something that we do on our podcast. I have a roundtable with our clerks and our attorneys, and we just talk about different situations. And sometimes I'll call them out and ask them, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? And I've had attorneys say the wrong answer. Like, okay, well, that's close, but now let's get the right answer, and let's go through, because this is a learning process. They say it's the practice of law, and I say, my response is that's right. It's not the perfect of law. We're always practicing, because we can never perfect it, because it's more of an art than it is a science.
Well, have you ever heard that kind of play on words, practice makes perfect? And they're like, yeah, it sure does. No, perfect practice makes perfect. Because if you're practicing the wrong way, it ain't, like if you're practicing your piano scales, the wrong way, you're going to ingrain that in your mind and your fingers and your neurons, and you're just doing it wrong. But you've been practicing, so it's got to be that perfect practice makes the end result the way you want it.
Yeah, well, I agree. It's good to hear somebody say things that kind of helps me say, okay, maybe I am doing the right thing. Maybe I am doing it the right way. So I appreciate that.
Neat. Well, I tell you, we've covered quite a bit here, and I love hearing your background and how you serve your clients. What do you like doing in the community? Do you have a way that your firm gives back, or what do you like doing for fun? Let's wrap up with a little bit on the personal side.
Man, you were asking all the good questions. Literally, and this is not something that we talked about before. We just had somebody in the office probably an hour ago. We gave tickets for the Wisconsin State Fair, which is coming up this week. So we do that pretty often. We try to do it once a month where we have something that we can give back. Have just random people. If they come in, we will give them a certain prize so they can have fun with their family. And this was a bunch of tickets, a lot of free things that they can have. Wisconsin has cream puffs, which are awesome. If you Google the Wisconsin cream puff, it's fantastic. It's very bad.
Well, let me tell you something. Really like we were talking about before we started recording, my kids go to college in Watertown, Wisconsin, and last summer was the first time we went out and got them settled in and stuff. But the Wisconsin cheese curds, let me just tell you a little something about that. Because you mentioned Culver's. We went to Culver's for the first time in Wisconsin, and I'm in Colorado, and we went to Culver's here, and for some weird reason, the cheese curds just don't taste the same in Colorado as they do in Wisconsin. So it's pretty amazing.
It's bad for you, but they taste so good.
Yeah, right.
Sure. So,
we'll just kind of focus on it's got some good protein in cheese, so let's just focus on that. I don't know, but that's really good. You bring up an interesting point about giving and serving and surprise gifting, and it's not like when you do this you get that. It's like, hey, just wanted to kind of strategically, have a strategic gifting program, and what a great thing. Gas cards and Starbucks cards are wonderful, but boy, having a state fair coming along, now that family, that group of people are really appreciative, and they are going to experience fun, and they attribute it back to you. And you could have given those tickets to just internal to your staff, but you want to give it to clients. I think that's spectacular.
I agree. I think that's something that we have a really, I guess, it's an obligation, right? I mean, you have to help others, and that just not only means in your business, but also in your personal life, and just in general, being of service to other people. So that's what we're trying to do, and hopefully we're succeeding in that.
100%. Well, John, it's so great talking with you. If someone listening to this is interested in, chatting with you about potential working together, what's the best way they can reach out and learn more and then connect with you?
Thanks. Yeah, the easiest way really is growthlawfirm.com, GROTH lawfirm.com. We have a live chat on there. You can talk to one of the staff. There's other things you can request. We have books that are coming out in a few weeks. And the other way is just simply the old-fashioned way, phone, or you can call or text 414-999-0000. And we have staff that are monitoring that, and you can call or text that number. So I like to think it's high-tech. 414-999-0000.
Excellent. Well, John, it was a real pleasure talking with you today. Thank you so much for coming on. It was really great listening and learning from you.
Thank you very much for the time. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully we'll see you around Wisconsin more and more often.
Yep, awesome. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.